Thank you. Morning, everybody.
Morning.
Yeah, right.
Thank you. Ladies and gents, Burnham, obviously, Mayoral candidate as well. A 5-minute introduction, over to you.
All right, so I'll crack it straight on.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Morning, everyone. Slightly croaky. Lease insurance don't mean to tell us every week, so I was there last night, so bear with my voice a little bit. So the first thing I would say is we need a plan for Greater Manchester. You know, we need a clear plan for the future. Where are we going? What are we trying to do? How can we build the homes that we need? Because we do need more homes. I think that's something that has to be said at the beginning. How are we going to bring in the jobs that we want, the quality jobs that we want for the future? You know, where's our prosperity going to come from? So what I would say is at the beginning we need a good, strong, clear plan, which in effect is a vision for where Greater Manchester is going in the next 20 years. And actually, not to have a plan, in my view, puts the Greenbelt more at risk, because I've seen it in my own constituency. Developers will exploit the lack of a plan to get the sites that they really want. So I'm not going to stand before you and say, oh, just scrap the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework and get rid of the whole idea.
Why is it that the government don't make sense?
Yeah, just wait,
I've got to answer questions afterwards, obviously, quite happy to. I think, you know, it's a right to have a clear plan, because then there's clarity, and it's actually better to protect the areas that then developers can't go to and try and get permissions for. And I think it's also right to have ambitions for the homes that we want to build, and then the jobs that we want to bring in. But then the second point I would make is you've got to have the right plan though. You know, the plan has got to do what it should do, which is improve quality of life for people in Greater Manchester. So what do I mean by the right plan? I think it's got to be a plan that doesn't just build more homes, it's a plan that's got to solve the housing crisis. You know, that is what we should be doing. That should be our objective when we're looking at the homes that Greater Manchester needs. Not just building big homes for people who don't live here to try and attract them here, building homes for people who are here and who can't get on the housing ladder. Council housing, social housing for people who can't afford to get on, can't get a mortgage. That is what we should be doing, a plan to solve the housing crisis. We need a plan that is going to at least maintain the air quality, but I would say improve it. You know, this issue seems to me to be completely missing from the consideration that has happened today. You know, we take air quality much more seriously than we have before, and actually we know the biggest driver of poor air quality is standing traffic on our roads. And at the moment, I don't think there is a recognition of that issue. We need a plan that's going to keep Greater Manchester moving. We can't just build along the roads and put more and more cars onto those roads, building homes with double garages that then are just going to add to our congestion. So we need to think about that as well. We need a plan that is about Greater Manchester as a great place to live. For me, the idea of dying town centres surrounded by urban sprawl is not a vision of Greater Manchester that I would want to put my name to. So, for all of those reasons, and actually one extra, of course, green space for people to enjoy, to improve their physical and mental health, you know, to give them respite from the noisy, the dirty, the overcrowded places, is an absolutely crucial part of that. So for all of those reasons, I thought the draft that was put forward for consultation fell well short of what was required in terms of a plan for Greater Manchester in the next 20 years. And I came out and I said so in February. I said that speaking entirely for myself on the basis of what I believed to be right. And I'm somebody who's been in politics long enough now to know that, you know, I speak for myself and I'm my own man. And in this case, though I was going against other Labour leaders who had put forward the plan, I was still absolutely right that this, I was clear in my mind that this was not the right plan for Greater Manchester. What would I like to see now? Well, I've talked about a radical rewrite of the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, and I repeat that commitment here today. I think it needs to be rebalanced back towards town centres and away from the precious green spaces that we all care about. if you're to do what I said at the beginning, solve the housing crisis, I think you have to build a much different mix of housing than the current Greater Manchester Spatial Framework puts forward. Homes, higher density development, development that is more about homes, affordable homes for people to rent, that is more driven by the public interest rather than the private interest. I think we've been living in a city region, to be honest, that has been too developer-led when it comes to housing and new development. It hasn't clearly staked out what the public interest is first, and then asked developers to meet that public interest. Instead, it seems to me to be too developer and private sector driven, and that has got to change. I would like to see a shift of emphasis back to our town centres. If I look at Lee, I want to see Lee remodelled in the next 10, 20 years. It isn't going to be the retail centre that it once was, or indeed the employment centre that it once was, but it can be a residential centre where we build higher quality development for people that is crucially linked to the public transport network. So we aren't just building homes to put more cars on the roads. Breathing new life into our town centres. I can answer more questions. There we go. That's a few thoughts to get you going.
We're going to fly with the questions and we'll go straight to Timberley.
Yeah,
Sure.
Sure.
Yeah, Stephen Longdon from Timothy. I'm also chair of the Say Greater Manchester Greenbelt campaign that's been set up recently. Your campaign manager, Andrew Gwynn, told me on Thursday that he was, and I quote, totally opposed to the GMSF Greenbelt grabbing exercise because of the impact on his constituents over at Tameside. Other MPs like Angela Rayner, also in Tameside, different colour Graham Brady down in my neck of the woods, etc., have all made their views public and they're against the grabbing of the Greenbelt. We know that the GMSF proposals are built on inaccurate brownfield site data, a fact demonstrated recently again by Andrew Gwynn. We know that the CPRE have proven that the population projection figures upon which the GMSF housing needs assessment are based are significantly overblown. We know that land developers are land banking and are in cahoots with councillors, a convenient relationship where the decommissioning of Greenbelt creates huge profits of 900% for the former and top-band council tax receipts for the latter. We were talking about this earlier on in the previous candidate. The people of Greater Manchester want a mayor who is able to put forward a GMSF, because we do want one, we agree the need for that provides a vision and plan for environmentally sustainable housing and economic development on solely brownfield sites. A mayor that resists the short-term greed of the private sector and always champions sustainable solutions to the problems we face. So, my question to you, Mr. Burnham, is will you commit to ensuring that future versions of the GMSF remove any suggestion of decommissioning Greater Manchester's Greenbelt?
Okay, you get all that. Don't test me. The phrase I used when I issued my response in February was no net loss. I would rather have said at that moment no loss, because I don't want to see any Greenbelt lost in Greater Manchester. It's precious. Once it's gone, it's gone. I think there needs to be, as I say, a big change of emphasis towards brownfield and higher density development on brownfield. I said no net loss just because I didn't have the analysis available to me at this stage as a candidate to be able to make a kind of complete statement without knowing the full consequences of what that might mean. But if I could have said no loss, I would have said no loss. And obviously there's a debate there about the homes that people are going to need and whether or not and how they can be developed. But that is my honest position. I will start from the position of trying to build a plan that has no loss of Greenbelt. That is what I will be trying to achieve from day one in office. And the way I will do that, as I say, is a couple of things actually. The move towards town centres and having a big focus as mayor on towns with regard to borrowing powers and other powers at my disposal, the Greater Manchester Housing Fund as well. Invite councils to put forward ambitious proposals to breathe new life into our struggling towns. That is going to be a big part of my agenda. But also a much more ambitious industrial strategy. You know, we want high quality jobs for the future. The dependence in the spatial framework on warehousing and distribution, well, okay, some of that might be needed. But that isn't an industrial vision for Greater Manchester. We need high quality jobs. We need jobs in renewable energy, advanced manufacturing. We want to see jobs in digital, in health and care. These are the sectors that we should be saying we want a spatial framework to promote those sectors, because they're the sectors that will drive our future prosperity. So that is what I will be looking to bring forward.
Just for clarity, Mr. Burnham, you said previously you talked about no net loss of Greenbelt. Not really sure what that means, but from what you say, you seem to be hinting that today you're able to commit to no loss of Greenbelt in the Great Manchester area.
I'm just trying to be honest directly with you. If I could have said that, I would have done, but I didn't have all of the analysis.
Now you do, and you've had the comments that I've made.
I still don't have all of the analysis. I've been through it, and I've met the officials that are drafting the document, and I've said to them I don't want to see any loss. But I've made that public statement about no net loss, because I don't want to make a commitment to you that within weeks of office you realise it's going to be difficult to fulfil. I want to fulfil it, but at this stage I'm afraid I'll still stick with that no net loss phrase.
Can you clarify what no net loss means?
It means if any is taken, the same area must be designated to be put in from somewhere else.
And
so the thing about Greenbelt, I think it's just important to say this. Greenbelt is not always what it says on the tin, if you know what I mean. Some Greenbelt can actually look what people might consider to be brownfield. You know, so Greenbelt isn't like this marvellous kind of rural vision that's kind of kept in perpetuity. Some Greenbelt actually falls into pretty poor condition and isn't usable by the public, and isn't what the public would consider to be the most precious space in their community. So what I was saying was, if there needs to be a kind of an adjustment where areas that aren't as cherished as other areas would come out of it, you'd have to put other areas back in to compensate, so that overall no net loss, if you understand what I'm saying. Sorry?
Would that be the same?
Yeah. Yes. The same community.
Question. I'm from Tameside. Andrew Quinn is actually our MP, who we mentioned that
Yeah.
against it. In our area, there's a piece of Greenbelt, it's town centre, vitally used, that's up for being sold, not under GMSF. Would you commit that as the mayor, you would stop it, that any Greenbelt would be as protected, whether it's in the GMSF or not, to be built on?
I wouldn't have that power, is the honest answer. I mean, I don't think it's going to be wrong of any candidate to say, I would do this, I would do that, if you overrule councils, because the job doesn't give you that power to do that.
I thought
I mean,
you did. I just asked the previous manager that he gave you legal power to do that.
Well, I'd have to look at the precise example. Councils will still have their legitimate planning function. The Greater Manchester Spatial Framework is obviously a strategic plan that sits above the ordinary planning processes of councils. We'd have to look at the example you're giving and give you could write to you on that.
Just a question there.
On this no net loss then, so if we've got grade 1 arable land, which was found regularly, and that's been proposed, a big wide sweep by Salford Council to use for, they've taken 280, planning to take 289.2 hectares, where they can use 64, and I can prove that based on the figures in the SDLP, which has just been issued, I'm Salford NIMBY, according to Councillor Roberts, because if we speak up against the council, we're in NIMBY. Yeah. That's in the papers, right? But they have put plans together where the population per dwelling is 1.26. Now that's the norm on their figures for every house that we wanted to build. It's 2.4 in the census from 2011. If you add them figures correctly, 70% for apartments, 30% for housing, you can lose 5,500 houses from their dwelling. They wanted to put 98% houses in Norman Caddies on Greenbelt and 2% on Brownfield. How can you justify those figures, and will you justify those figures? And if you're talking about net loss, would you go for arable land, which based on Brexit, will we need to use, because we're getting shortages already in different places. I've got photographs that can demonstrate how arable that land is. It's grade 1, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Plus, you mentioned traffic. Port Salford has got permission for 4,000 two-way traffic movements per day at that junction. The A57, there only is a one-way in and one-way out of town, right? And that's going to go on there. That traffic jam, if you go on there at 8 o'clock in the morning, you don't move. We've got the M60 at one side, we've got the M62, poor health condition, we've already exceeded European commitments, right? And now you're going to add all these traffic junctions, we're going to have an extra 3,000 two-way cars.
So I don't justify the figures. It wasn't my document. I mean, I wasn't consulted on the drawing up of this document, and I have many, if not all, of the concerns about it that you've just described. In Lee, there's a farm just off the East Lancs Road, a family who I know very well, who saw their farm in the plan without ever being told it was going to be in the plan. And that is just unacceptable. And I said a minute ago that it's too developer-led. The call for sites, I think, has been used to put pressure on individual families and farmers who all of a sudden see that they're being somehow bullied into giving up what has been a family farm for
I'll just move on.
centuries. So
People have many questions.
it's not my plan, and I'm not defending it in any way, shape or form. I want to rewrite the plan to deal with air quality, to tackle congestion. That's my whole point.
Okay, question from Longdendale. The Office of Mayor comes with new powers. Will these powers loosen protection for Greenbelt land? Will these powers affect regulations related to CPOs? Will local communities be part of the decision-making process, or will devolution merely strengthen the hand of those with executive powers?
Well, it's a really crucial question, this, because devolution, in many ways, could take power off communities if we're not careful. You know, it could weaken, as I was saying, the role of local councils by hoovering powers up to that city region level. And I think the way it's been developed to this point has been a bit top-down. It's all been a bit imposed, and I don't think it does feel as though it's owned by the community. Now, I want to make a commitment to you all today that I don't work in that way. I never have done. You speak to people in Lee who know me. Have been a grassroots MP. I'll be a grassroots mayor. You know, devolution, if it goes on this basis, then it will fail spectacularly if it doesn't listen to communities. You know, that's why politics is in such a bad condition right now, because there has been too much kind of just sweeping aside of people's opinion. I don't work like that. I never have worked like that. If you speak to a group called Lendef in Lowton and Golden, which is where I live, you might say, oh, he's saying this now as a candidate. Ask them what I have done as their MP. I've never gone along with every plan from Wigan Council. I left Westminster on a Wednesday afternoon when I had other things on to go and speak for them against Wigan's core strategy in 2013 because I had concerns about the take of land off the East Lancs again. So I've done that in the past. Sorry?
Can we just clarify what we mean by this question?
Well, the point I'm just coming to is I intend to do politics very differently. I will listen, I will work with local groups, I will work with all of you to get this plan right. And that's what I'm saying.
Well, when you say no net loss, there is land going to be brought in to replace Greenbelt that's lost. That's the inference that I make.
Yeah.
How will local communities have an influence? Because if you know the history of the area, you know there have been times in the past where replacements have been promised, but we don't see it. It does not happen. It just gets lost in the stream of history.
Yeah.
And so, you know, if once we lose Greenbelt land, we are effectively saying that the whole area changes. And that is the big worry in this area.
It loses its Greenbelt status then.
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
So how are communities be involved?
No, I would put it in. It would be in the framework. It would be redesignated at the same time. Is what I'm saying. The reason why I'm concerned that people don't much care for this phrase, no net loss, and I understand that, and it sounds a bit like a politician phrase, and I get all of that. Honestly, I do. The reason why I used that phrase was I sat and had my first briefing on this document. I think it was in Kevin, January, was it? Or January. And I said I would want the brownfield first policy. And I said, can you achieve your home building objectives for Greater Manchester with purely looking at brownfield and high density? Now they told me directly that they couldn't. So that was.
So who told you that?
These were the officials that were responsible for that. I don't actually have all the names to hand. We could.
So the officers.
Yeah. Yes, that's right.
That's all.
But the point is though, it depends what type of homes you're trying to build, doesn't it? If you're building higher bedroom homes, executive homes, then maybe you can't do it. But my point back to them is going to be, of this target that you've got for home building, I want a bigger percentage of those homes to be council houses and flats, social housing, smaller homes for first-time buyers, rent-to-own properties for people in their 20s and 30s. I want like a very different mix on housing. I think Greater Manchester, in the last 10, 20 years, hasn't focused anything like enough on affordable housing. You know, the commitment to it has not been there, and consequently we have a housing crisis. So if you have a different housing policy of the kind that I'm proposing, your demand for Greenbelt and green space substantially changes and reduces.
That's on the density, right? Just out in my local authority, who happens to be the leader of this absolute, white elephant of a plan, we have at least 11,000 plots of brownfield land for houses. 11,000. Just brownfield in one local authority. And that's what I'm saying. The figures that you're getting told are farcical, but nobody's checking it out.
Well, Andrew Gwynn is, who's my campaign manager, who's been referenced today. He runs my Mayoral campaign, Andrew. And I'm challenging them. That's why I didn't go along with what they were telling me. And that's why I issued the statement that I did. And it comes really to the heart of it. It's about what kind of housing policy are you going to propose, isn't it? Because that should drive the demand for space. Developers want those easy green spaces on the big roads, don't they? It's cheaper to develop, and you get higher value properties on those places. And if you have a process that's developer-led, it's going to, in my view, it's going to come up with the right answer for them, but the wrong answer for the public. And that is what has happened with the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework.
Andy, I think there's something that's really important that you clarify for us, because I think Charlotte's got a valid point there. When people were asking you questions, you said, well, this is not my plan and I don't have the powers, but quite frankly, if you become the mayor, you do have, we're being told, the power to veto the building on the Greenbelt site, because it has to be a unanimous vote from everyone. So that's slightly in conflict of what you're saying. So I think you need to clarify, are you prepared where it is beautiful countryside, where it's out of the town, and it clearly is executive houses and not affordable houses? Are you prepared to stand up and say, I will vote against any developments on that? Because if you don't, then for me personally, that's a big issue.
Well, no, I am. That's what I am saying to you today.
You
I was
just
just, it was a specific example that I just held back from. I mean, I don't know the details of that.
Well, the problem
You mentioned a specific.
Because the previous man said they had the legal power. She has the power to CPO brownfield and to say yes or no to anything. That's what she said. Clearly, I have the legal power to veto anything. I can veto the whole GMSF.
And the GMSF accept that.
I think we don't want to get confused on this, do we? Because it's quite crucial. I thought you referenced something to me, which was, I understood you were saying is in a local core strategy that's already...
strategy that you have the power to basically oversee the whole strategy.
I think it's sorry, can we just...
Sorry, just a second, guys, just listen up, just 1 second.
I think from what I can gather, and this is from the combined authority, where is it? Yeah, we are proposing that insofar as compulsory purchase of powers concerned, there will be a function of the elected GM Mayor, but that the GM Mayor will not be able to exercise any of their compulsory purchase powers without the consent of the GMCA cabinet members for the area of land to be subject to the compulsory purchase powers.
But that's referring to the compulsory purchase powers. What we're trying to say is GMSF are saying there are 11 votes. And you, if you get elected, can one of those votes, and it has to be unanimous. The other point you said is...
No, we're getting confused a little bit. The plan has to be unanimous. So the plan has to be agreed. Yeah. It's the Mayor's document, but it has to be agreed by unanimously by the Mayor and the 10 members This was different. This was an issue about CPO in Brownfield, and that has got to be an agreement between the mayor and the leader of the individual council concerned. I don't want to stand here and say I'll do things that I wouldn't have the power. You know.
I totally agree,
Okay.
and I think that's a slightly side issue, the CPO, for this. That's what we
Yeah.
And
That was the
So
question.
the vote with the 11, if you're on the 11, it's
Yeah.
an issue that all 11 vote on.
Yeah.
Will you vote against it?
Yes, is yes is the answer.
Yeah.
No, yes is the answer to that. But you see why I was just wanting to promise things that I couldn't promise. I can promise to vote, but I can't promise to do it.
Okay, guys, just we'll move on because I know there's loads of questions. There's a message from Save Our Slavics in the group back there. Okay, and it's the draft GMSF makes much of the need to greatly expand distribution warehousing, which you've alluded to. Would you agree that this approach is flawed, as Greater Manchester should not be focusing on HGV type transportation, but looking to moving the vast majority of goods, at least across the Pennines, via steadily improving or speedily improved and electrified rail network?
Well, I would absolutely agree with that. The investment in west to east rail across the north of England, in my view, is the single highest transport investment priority for this country. It's certainly a higher priority than HS2, in my view. Massively higher than Crossrail 2 for London, which is also being proposed. And I will make that argument. I will be making that argument running into the budget. And I think it's the only way we can build a sustainable future. You know, we cannot carry on putting more and more cars onto our roads. I would say we're at saturation point now, actually. Greater Manchester is grinding to a halt. My worry would be now that if any investor was landing at Manchester Airport and going to have a drive around to see where they might invest, they would say, oh, you can't get around here. This isn't a good place to go. We've got to get radical in terms of changing the way transport's working. It's not just rail, although that would be a government decision, but I would strongly support.
So I suppose it goes back to the question, your questions around throwing HGVs, because I think in that area there's a lot of warehousing proposals, you know, distribution.
Yes, the government has excluded Greater Manchester from its list of clean air zones. So there's a proposal around air quality. They've been challenged legally, the government, I don't know if you know about this, but over air quality because we're in breach. And they've designated 6 places as being areas that can introduce clean air zones, and we are not one of them. And I've written to the Prime Minister to say we must be made one because we are in breach. And that gives them the power to start to exclude HGVs from certain parts of the city region. So I'm asking for those powers because I want to use them. But I might just quickly add for me, it's got to be this plan has to have a proper infrastructure plan to support it. And by infrastructure, I mean a high-quality, dedicated cycle network all over Greater Manchester. I mean plans to expand Metrolink. I'm talking about radial links across Greater Manchester. You've got to link housing to a proper public transport investment plan. And the great weakness of the GMSF as it stands doesn't do that at all in my view.
Okay.
Just last quick point.
Yeah.
About HGVs. Port of Salford on the A57 it's been approved with the Traffic and Transport Agency consultancy, 3,776 two-way traffic movements for HGVs alone on the A57. And that's in the document.
Well, I would, if I could say something to all of you that might help your campaigns and give you more. If you focus on the air quality issue, I think you might have objections that are then incredibly strong, because I don't think the air quality issue has been considered at all, actually, in respect of this plan. Get a monitor and monitor the places that you are campaigning for to find out the air quality, because if it's already in breach, then how can a development of that kind not make it even more in breach? And I think we've all been a bit too, this is causing major damage to health. I think it's a public health crisis, actually, the poor quality of air across parts of Greater Manchester. It's an issue that's been invisible because, you know, people haven't been able to get angry about it because they can't see it. I think it's a much bigger issue that needs to be taken far more seriously, and it needs to start with the
I know there's lots of questions. I'll try and get through a couple of these.
Our council leader in Rochdale, we met last week, when we spoke about the air quality, which would be, we'd have a problem with, there were more houses being built and warehouses and such like. and he's the actual portfolio holder for this plan, he totally dismissed the air quality problem. Now, how are we going to deal with that when you're speaking about the air quality, that we should like concentrate on this, and yet he's the portfolio holder for this spatial plan, and yet he just dismissed it out of hand, as though, well, we can still build houses, people will still come, even if the air quality is bad. So we're up against that.
Well, I can only speak for myself, you know, obviously I'm only here to speak from my own view, and as I said, I'm standing to be mayor on my with my own platform, and I'm speaking, you know, for myself here and saying it can't be dismissed. And if you look at what I've been doing the last 2 weeks, I've been saying that this issue must come right up the agenda. It can't be dismissed for a very simple reason, actually. The government, if they don't do something, is about to be fined by the European Union. They still can, and they're going to. They've told us, they gave us a final warning, actually, I think it was 10 days ago, that they're going to fine us massively unless we have a plan in place to deal with this issue. And the government, in the localism bill that's gone through Parliament, has taken the power in that bill to pass national fines to metro mayors. So, if the country is fined for being in breach of poor air, they are going to pass the fine to the mayor. And for that simple reason, it can't be ignored. Because that would take money out of the pot in Greater Manchester, and it's money that we need for other things, but also, you know, we shouldn't be having a policy position where we're tolerating poor air.
Just go back, just take a couple of points and then we'll move on.
We're from Burnham County, it's called PFOF. We have a problem. We have 6 local Labour councils that have completely, what the has just said, have completely ignored. We've got a 34-page document together against the Salford local plan, and we talked to everybody, all the experts involved, and Roger Jones, one of the councils. It's been completely and utterly ignored. They just mow over them like they do as politicians, and they talk about something else. This guy wants to build in Chatmoss. I was there last week with the Environment Secretary and Teresa Coffey. We met, and she drove over 3 miles of Chatmoss she had to get to sort out this other place she was going to. And she didn't realise that's been earmarked for housing. And it's grade 1, high-end, it's grade 1, agricultural land. She went up to this thing up in the mosque where they're spending £1 million. They're completely ignoring everything we say. We've done this full debate. We did air quality, we did flooding, we did traffic. We went into everything. We got all the experts in from all the universities. And we have got 6 councillors in Earl that are just completely ignoring everyone.
Well, I need to wonder if it's a prerequisite for
Well, yeah,
to be a Labour council.
Barbara Keeley, by the way, has been down and she's been absolutely fantastic.
You know, I can't speak for what I say, but there are lots of. Barbara is also on my campaign, she's co-chairing it, she's been very strong. Yvonne Favar was my neighbouring MP in Makerfield. And I don't think it is, I think this is more, well, people can look at it as part of a political issue if they like, but you know, I think it's a mixed picture, isn't it? And the government's all very well, a minister coming down and doing that, but government are piling pressure on people around house building, but also, and this goes back to a point that was raised earlier, the cuts that they're giving to our councils, and there's a big protest about this later on today, are massive. The cuts that they're giving to our schools are bigger than the rest of the country. The changes they're making to business rates are forcing councils to begin to panic because they don't know how they're going to care for older people. And sadly, I think it's correct to say, some of this now lies behind, well, what are we going to do? You know, how are we going to make the budget add up? And I think that's the disconnect here that's in this debate that maybe people aren't being honest about. You know, these
don't want our councillors to panic, do they?
Well, but the thing is, I think there's a bigger picture, isn't there, that I think needs to be considered.
Well, Salford were going to get fined £2 million for not doing the plan, and that seems to be their priority. It's like, if we don't do the Salford local plan, we're going to get fined £2 million from the government.
Well, Salford has already had massive cuts, because we had an event with the elected city mayor last week, and you can't differentiate this debate that's going on about localising business rates and the cuts to councils from this. I'm afraid you can't, because it's unfair, basically. It's massively unfair what they're having to put up with. I mean, look, compare how Salford's been cut to councils down south. It's just not right, in my view.
Guys, we'll just get back on point. Sorry, just one. Yeah, take your point and then we'll move on really quickly.
Sorry, in your opening speech, you talked about quality jobs, warehousing. You think warehousing provides quality jobs? Because Mr. Farnell, a quote from his leader blog says, "Don't let anyone kid you, these are low-skilled, low-paid jobs. They are not." Now, this seems at odds with, you know, the JD Sports expose there on Kingsway, Rochdale, that Channel 4 did, and that highlighted the intolerable working conditions. He said it was worse than prison for the workers there. You know, 1,500 people working there. Is that what we should be promoting?
I suppose the question is, you're obviously talking about, you know, technical engineering role.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the warehouses aren't going up, where would it put the likes of these scientific parks, for want of a better word?
Well, exactly. I mean, I think you're right. I agree with you. We need higher ambitions than warehousing and distribution. And I would have my own doubts about the quality of some of those jobs, because I've got a lot of distribution centres in my own constituency. But I would also put a second point on the table there and say, my worry is many of them will be automated in the future. Because these distribution centres, if you look at them, they're highly automated now. And the question is, there may be jobs now, but would there be jobs in 10 years' time? So, you know, you've got to have a plan for Greater Manchester that is about this place paying its way, you know, earning our prosperity from high value, high skill industries. You know, we met with Manchester Digital last week, and they tell us that they've got a major skills shortage, and they are turning investors away, you know, because the skills aren't coming through in digital. We've got to have a complete change of focus here. We've got to set our ambitions at the higher end of the spectrum.
If I may, there have been some warehouses and distribution built in the Bolton area. So much so, it's very what we wanted by all the people. The council has had to give Persimmon £2.2 million to encourage people to fill the warehouses they've built. Is that right?
Again, I don't know the specifics, but it doesn't sound it, but I don't know the specifics.
Okay, I'll move on to other questions from the Wigan group here. Wigan NBC planners have been approaching local landowners and offering to put them in contact with developers wanting to buy their land. They've also been writing to the same landowners inferring they will be compulsory purchasing the land. When the council has been challenged on this behaviour, the answer the council has given is it is common practice. What are your views on this, and how would you plan to restore public confidence in the impartialness and integrity of the council planning departments? Big question.
More than my views, I'll tell you about my actions. I've actively supported my constituents who've been on the receiving end of that behaviour. I find it completely unacceptable that pressure is placed upon people in that way. With their permission, I can share the correspondence that I've had with Wigan Council on it. I come back to it. The whole thing is flawed because it's developer-led. And if you start with that approach of a call for sites, let them put forward what they want, you are never going to get. It's going to be a plan in the private interest, not the public interest. And that is the basic problem, in my view, with the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework. And I think the point was made before. There is brownfield around. I've got a massive site in the middle of Leigh that's never been developed. It was the old BICC site. Why doesn't it get developed? It doesn't get developed because the land they want gets released. So the minute you release green land, you take away the incentive completely for them to develop the brownfield. So this is where the spatial framework got it wrong, in my view. If you want brownfield to be developed, you don't release the other land because they won't go there. And also, they don't build there.
And how will you manage that place?
Sorry?
How will you manage that place?
Because you...
How would you manage it?
Because you have a plan that doesn't allow it, basically.
You put it in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's be absolutely clear with you. I said a substantial reduction in the loss of green space and green, well, and no net loss. As I say, I wish I could say no loss, but I don't have that analysis to be able to say that. But I would like to be able to say it. I'm trying to develop a GMSF with no loss of Greenbelt. That's what I'm going to try and do. But I don't want you to think that that's his public pronounced statement that there will be no loss, because we don't yet have the analysis to be able to support that.
Can I just clarify, the BICC site's had plans passed to build 600 houses on it now,
yeah.
So it's not right to say that it's there to be developed, the plans have actually been passed.
Yeah, no, wait 1 second though, because I know that very well, and I've worked on that for the last 15 years, to be honest. I've wanted houses built on that site for the last 15 years, but it's never happened. It's never happened. Why has it never happened? Because other green sites keep getting released. So the incentive isn't there, is it? If they get, house builders are getting other sites that are easier and cheaper to develop, that's the question. I've waited and pushed for that site to be developed all these years, and it hasn't. Why hasn't it happened? Because other easier sites keep getting released, and that's my point. That's entirely my point.
So as Mer, you can make a stance
yes.
that actually nothing else will be released until these plans have been
correct.
developed.
Absolutely right. Yes. And actually, just to add to that, because you'll say, well, how? There's a Greater Manchester Housing Fund that comes with devolution, £300 million. And George Osborne's made it exclusively for big private entities at the moment, so that you can see the cranes around Manchester, major schemes, buy-to-let schemes going on. I am going to make sure, when the money comes back from those loans, I'm going to work with councils to build more council housing in town centres, to revitalise town centres. That is my plan. So I will go to a site like the BICC site and say, mixed development, some council housing, some social housing, get it going. That is the kind of housing policy we need. And then if you get the housing policy right, you'll get the land use policy right.
Okay, just 2 points and then we wrap up.
Andy, you were just talking then about Greenbelt and changing plans, and it needs to be addressed. Could you guarantee also, you're welcome to stand now, that you will personally check between now and X amount of time, i.e. we've got to choose who we want to vote for as the mayor. So can you look at all the Greenbelt sites and have a look at where they are and some of the feedback and tell us what your viewpoint is on every site? Because for me, that is going to dictate where I'm going to vote for there.
Okay, I will give you that commitment. I will look at the individual schemes and start to give you some views on those.
So you come back through this group, what's the time frame for you doing that? Because obviously we don't want it a week before the elections, we want to know.
I mean, the difficult thing, of course, is that if you say this for this site and this for, and I don't have the access to the analysis at the moment. I can give you my...
You have what we have.
Yeah, sorry, just speaking as the chair, because this is very much the discussion that we've been having in our planning meetings. It's really good to hear you kind of commitments today, and you fleshed it out, and you clarified what non-active loss of green means for us, and you've made a commitment. So if I'm wrong, because now's the time that it's going to be brownfield first, and you want a substantial reduction in the amount of Greenbelt, if any, in the next iteration of the plan. That's great to hear that. In order to kind of convince ourselves and to make sure we're on board, now that we have come together as a result of not being aware of the plans and the GMSF as it was being developed over the last couple of years, the next iteration is summer, I believe. Don't have a date yet. July. Right. So obviously the election is going to be before then. I would like, I suspect many people in the room would like, a commitment from you, if you're elected mayor in May, that either before or when that next iteration is ready to be produced, you will sit down with us, with your planners if necessary, because you have obviously that authority then, and we can literally go through that plan with you, and we can look at what is being proposed for every single, if there is any Greenbelt in this new iteration, so that we can look at that, look at your reasoning for including that in terms of no net loss, and whether that's acceptable to us, etc.
Okay, can I finish on those last 2 points?
Yes.
Because I think that's and I'll never go back to your point. You never asked me your point.
My point was about the declassification of land for the Greenbelt. Now, what you were saying before about there being Greenbelt that you would think maybe look like Brownbelt, it doesn't matter what it looks like. It could be glorious pastures or it could be a dodgy piece of looking land. If Greenbelt gets declassified, then who controls which bit of Greenbelt they take? Because it's up for a grabs then, they can have whatever. So the Greenbelt needs protected, whether it looks like a piece of Brownbelt or whether it looks like glorious greenery. Because as soon as it gets declassified,
that's
they
it.
can have free grab on anything.
Sure.
So how is that going to get protected and how are you going to do that?
Because different people, sorry to interrupt, would have different views on. So someone might think that actually it looks like a brownfield site, when actually it's really used by that local
I know, I've seen.
population. So
Yeah, it's relevant of what it is. It doesn't
that's
actually
why
have it.
I just want to kind of capture those last points, if I may. I mean, the point about commenting on local schemes. I mean, I can't give you honestly because I've not got access to the full analysis of each borough in terms of why those sites and where the other sites. If you weren't to build there, where else would you go? I just don't have access to that level of information. I don't. And for me to start doing a pick and mix around the thing, it wouldn't be right because saying this for this scheme. And if you wrote to me, I would try and answer you. And give you an answer. I'll do that as best I could. But I don't think I want anyone to go away. But you're all going to get a specific answer on your individual scheme. I don't think that would be right. However, let me go on to the pick your points as well. I give you this commitment. I will meet. I would come and meet before there's another draft of this document out there. And from my point of view, this should be a big moment for Greater Manchester, shouldn't it? We are dealing with the consequences of Westminster policies that we haven't liked for many years, that have given us a housing crisis, that have failed to invest in our public transport. And finally, we're getting the chance to do some of this for ourselves and set a vision for our own communities that feels right for us because we've decided it. It would be disastrous if it got off to this start where there was just kind of conflict around and fights between the mayor and community. That would just hold devolution below the waterline, it seems to me. What we've got to try and do between us is develop a plan that feels that we can all say give and take, because there might need to be give and take, let's be honest, compromise, because we do need more homes and we do need better jobs. But if we can get that right plan that is right for communities too, the power of that plan could be enormous, couldn't it? It could really be a strong plan that then puts Greater Manchester really on the right path. But it's got to be right for your community, and it's got to be a balanced plan that balances the need for those new jobs against those things that you hold dear. And if Greenbelt is designated in the plan, that's Greenbelt, then it can't be touched. And as I say, I'm trying not to. I would not want to take any Greenbelt at all. That's the objective I will set myself. I've used this phrase, just to because I don't have all the analysis.
I think the thing really, and I hope I'm not speaking on behalf of everybody. I think this group really want to work in partnership.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's needed.
Sure. Rather than in isolation.
Yeah.
And I think that's key for this moving forward. Really.
And I would absolutely embrace that.
In all of this, we've got Peel Holdings in all of their guises, and they have been a very powerful player in every authority in Greater Manchester.
I think it's an important point, because I think what's happened is the councils have lost staff, haven't they, over the years? And you've got a mismatch here between some of these powerful companies and councils, departments that don't feel they can stand up to. In my political career, I have always, in my view, spoken out, however powerful, and I've stood up for the little man and woman many times in my political career. I'm not frightened by anybody like that. I'm coming in to be mayor for the people of Greater Manchester, not for the corporations of Greater Manchester. And you've got to work with business to get prosperity and jobs, but it's got to be done in the right way. And I'll give you that commitment. I will work with you to get it right.
First and supporters on our rally in Manchester.
Yes.
I don't know, maybe, I don't know, but I have I've got other things in my diary.
One final question before you go. So, Economist article, it's not about the Greater Manchester Spatial Framework.
Oh, really?
The Economist article of the recent week, and it talked about having Manchester as the home for the Palace of Westminster. If in terms of the building work, what do you think about that?
Are we going to build it on Greenbelt?
You can use the redundant in rooms in.
I think that's where the powerhouse that is London will see what it's like to live in Manchester.
Just very lastly then, this is important. This plan should be the vision for the powerhouse, shouldn't it?
It should.
And as I say, warehousing, distribution, large homes, dying towns, that's not a plan that is a powerhouse in my view. That's not a vision of the future. It's why I won't put my name to that current plan, and it's why we'll radically rewrite it with you if I'm successful in that. That's great.